This is the 18 Strong Podcast with Jeff Pellizzaro, episode number 33.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzaro.
Hello, everybody. This is Jeff Pellizzaro, physical therapist and golf fitness professional and host of the 18 Strong Podcast. I want to thank you guys for showing up and listening to the show today, wherever you're listening from, in your earbuds, on the road, on a run, on the golf course, maybe hitting some balls. I want to thank you for being here, and I have to say that today's episode is probably an instant favorite of mine, not only because the gentleman that I'm interviewing, Jim Holtgrieve, is a legend in St. Louis golf, which is where I'm from and where the 18 Strong Podcast resides. But Jim has also become a good friend over the past several years and has become an inspiration to me just in the world of golf, but also just such a genuine guy and a great guy that I love to talk to and has so many great stories. And so I was thinking to myself, this is Masters Week 2015, so the day that this episode is airing for the first time is on the very first day of the Masters in 2015, and I wanted to do something special for the Masters Week. I think we all would agree that this tournament is like no other, and we all kind of get that special feeling when we sit down to watch the Masters. And I don't know about you, but I could sit and watch it from end to end, no interruptions, but unfortunately probably won't be able to do that. But I wanted to do something pretty cool and find somebody that had some experience with the Masters and everything that kind of encompasses that. I even thought about bringing on a little bit of the Masters theme music for the podcast, maybe for the intro or whatever, but then I kind of thought otherwise that probably wouldn't be too smart to copyright infringe from the guys at the Masters. I have a feeling they might be able to track me down. So I opted to not do that and let's just go with Jim Holtgrieve as the guest. And Jim has some awesome stories in this episode where he talks about the first time he ever got to play golf with Mr. Arnold Palmer and has a great story about that he shares. He also has possibly the greatest round of putting that Augusta National has ever seen, and he did that in, I don't remember what year it was, but the sixth time that he played in the Masters, and he was actually as a non-competitive marker, but he's got a great story about that, so I'll let you tune in for that later. And then his experience as the Walker Cup captain, both in 2011 and 2013, and some pretty cool stories, getting to meet President George W. Bush when they were up in New York in 2013, and just working with the guys, of the likes of Jordan Spieth, Harris English, Russell Henley, Peter Uihlein, Justin Thomas, all these guys, and just the experiences that he had around that. So I love the message that Jim has in today's episode, and it's the message of enjoying the experience, and I think that's so pertinent to the week of the Masters, and I'm sure all these guys going to Augusta for the first time, playing, possibly you going back to remembering the time that maybe you got a chance to go to the Masters and watch, and the feelings that you had the first time you were there. So I can't wait to get there one of these years, and hopefully in the next couple of years, and experience that for myself. So Jim's message of experiencing it and really taking hold of that experience, not necessarily worrying so much about the winning of it all and getting wrapped up in that, but the experience of the Walker Cup and the things that he did and how he kind of missed out on some of those because he was so focused on the competitive side. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. And just a couple quick notes before we jump into it. I know we want to get to the meat of the stuff, but we made some great changes to the website. I have to thank my cousin Ryan, who is also part of the backbone of the 18 Strong Podcast, where we did some updates on the podcast page, so it's much easier to listen to the podcast episodes. So go to 18strong.com. You'll see the podcast link up top, and click on that, and you'll be able to get to all the previous interviews and scroll through those, and you can listen right there on the page or download it straight from the page. And then, of course, if you haven't picked up the free ebook, 5 yards in less than 15 minutes, that's there to pick up a copy. I've gotten some great feedback, and I've actually had some different coaches and instructors tell me that they're now implementing what is in that free ebook with their teams and their classes and their students in a lot of their different lessons. So take that, 5 yards, less than 5 minutes. It's just a couple great drills to increase some speed in your game and really put a little more power in your drive. So without further ado, let's get to the episode with Jim Holtgrieve. I know you guys are going to enjoy this one. Hey, Captain Holtgrieve, welcome to the 18 Strong podcast, and thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, Jeff. How you been?
Been great. And for all the listeners out there, Jim and I are friends and know each other. Jim's has been a client of mine prior to today's interview, and I've gotten to know him pretty well over the past few years. And I wanted to bring Jim on as a special guest because this episode, Jim, is going to be released the day that the Masters 2015 starts. And I thought, what better way to celebrate the Masters than bring on, someone who has played in the Masters several times. I want to get some stories from you, get a little bit of info of, what your experiences were like there. But before we do that, just to give a little background to the audience on you, Jim's a highly decorated player as well as captain of the Walker Cup teams, both year 2013, 2011. He was the 1981 U.S. Mid-Amateur Championship, the runner-up of the 1983 British Amateur, played on 3 Walker Cup teams himself, turned pro back in, was it 98, Jim?
Yes, sir.
And how many Masters did you end up playing in?
I ended up playing in 5 Masters.
Excellent. So, Jim, if you could, and we're going to get into a lot of the stories of the Masters and the Walker Cup stuff, but if you could give us just a very brief background on yourself, kind of how you got into the game, growing up into it, and then, a little brief summary of your playing career, and then we'll jump into the stories.
Well, Jeff, thank you for the opportunity. I certainly I love to talk golf, and somebody as nice as you has been trying to help me keep my golf game going through the company. Golf has certainly been a very big part of my life. My dad started me when I was 4 years old back at Sunset Country Club with Jim Fogarty. And I have 2 sons, so people say, well, starting golf at the age of 4, you're not really doing much. Well, you're not, but I learned how to basically take a swing and learn how to grip the club. And my dad just he didn't force me, he didn't push me, he introduced me to the game, and I love sport. I played basketball, and I played tennis, and during high school, you were only allowed to play one spring sport, and I decided at that point in time that golf would probably be the game that I should try to take on and play more of. And it's probably one of the best decisions I made because golf has been I'm so blessed to have played the game, and it's been so good to me. So I graduated from Webster Groves High School. I went down to Mizzou on a golf scholarship. Things didn't work out for me. I wasn't a very good student, about a C student. I love sport. So Vietnam was going strong, and I wasn't going to go to Canada. So the best thing that I thought that I could do to grow up and mature and learn respect was to go in the United States Air Force, which I did for 4 years. Another great decision because I learned I learned a lot more about life and what's important, and I'm certainly honored to have served my country. So, and I got transferred after being in the Air Force for 2.5 years in Colorado and Kansas. I got transferred to Hawaii my last year and a half, and basically had a chance to play golf every day. So I changed some things with my grip and my swing, and I won a big tournament over there. I basically came back. Wrote a letter to my head pro, Tony Henschel at Westboro Country Club, and asked about turn pro. And would I have an opportunity, could he help raise some funds so I could turn pro? And long and short of it is that Jim Fox, who was a member at Westboro Country Club, was a CPA for Stan Musial and Ben Kerner. Ben Kerner owned the St. Louis Hawks at that time. And Tony wrote me a letter back, and he said, I got you the money, but he said, I got to be honest with you, you've really never won any big tournaments in and around Missouri, much less the U.S. You won a couple little junior tournaments, but I suggest you come back and find a job and see what happens with your amateur career. So another good decision. I didn't turn pro. I came back, went to work for my dad at Holtgrieve and Company. We were a manufacturer's agent in the steel business and the rubber business, and we I got into a position where I worked real hard. I worked in sales. I did a lot of traveling, and I kind of used golf to be with some clients, and played in tournaments, and things just kind of seemed to mushroom when I qualified. I won the district title in 1977, beating Bobby Mason at Glen Echo, and that kind of launched, I think it helped launch my career because I finally realized that I could win. I won on the last hole, the 36 holes, the 36-hole match. So I focused on that and used that to go forward with some tournaments. I qualified in '78 for the U.S. Open. I made the cut at the Open in Cherry Hills, where ironically Arnold Palmer won the U.S. Open in 1960. So we're going to talk about the Masters, and I got a great story with Mr. Palmer. But so when I made the cut at the Open, I got even more confidence, and I came back and won the Missouri Amateur, ironically at Sunset Country Club in 1978. And then I started using that, and I started playing some national tournaments. I played in the Western Amateur up in Point of Woods up in Michigan, qualified for the U.S. Amateur, and had a chance to I got a chance to play for the Walker Cup in 1979, which that put me to a new level of amateur golf, because it was at that time, top 10 best amateurs in the United States. I think because I was fortunate because a couple of guys, John Cook and Mark O'Mara, decided not to play Walker Cup instead of playing for their college because the NC2As were going on at the same time. So I probably wouldn't have made that team, but I did. And then back then, the Walker Cup teams and the World Amateur teams got invited to play in the Masters because Bobby Jones always wanted to have an amateur win the Masters. So he invited the two teams, and that's how I got into my first Masters in 1980. And then I guess it just went on. I made the world team in 80, and then I made Walker Cup for 81. I made the world team in 82. I won the Mid-Am in 81. So from 1979 to about 1984, I had a good run playing a lot of national tournaments, and I won the Missouri Amateur again. And as you mentioned earlier, I lost in the finals of the British Amateur in 83. Made the cut, the Masters 3 out of 5 times. And so I really had I was very fortunate, and I worked hard at it, but it paid off. And so things kind of changed. We had, my wife and I had 2 boys, Scott and Stephen, and my business was becoming more important. So the fact about trying to continue on playing at a national level didn't seem to make sense, so I backed off a little bit, and then kept working hard on it. And then in '98, I decided things were changing so much in the business world. Unfortunately, U.S. manufacturers were going overseas, and so a lot of things were changing. The only thing I knew how to do was to play golf. So I tried to turn pro and play on the professional senior tour, Champions Tour for about 3 or 4 years. It was successful, I guess. I won some money. I never had a full exempt status, but I got a chance to meet so many great people from around the country, and I got a chance to play golf every day. So that worked out well, but I decided since I couldn't do it on my own, since I went to 6 Q schools, and while I had a couple of good schools, I never got full status. I did have some tentative status. I decided that if I couldn't do it on my own, I got 36 sponsor exemptions in my 4.5 years, so I wasn't going to ask anymore. So I decided to get out of the professional ranks. I came back to work here in St. Louis. Doug Albrecht, very kind, to give me my first sponsor exemption out at the Boone Valley Classic. Hired me to come work at a company called TRG, which is a licensee for Swiss Army Luggage, part of the Enterprise Group. And so I did that, and I've been doing that for a number of years. I got my Amherst status back, and the USGA so graciously allowed me to be the captain in 11 and again in 13. And so worked hard on that, and I guess kind of brings us almost up to today, and it's been a heck of a ride.
That's incredible. So many good things going on in the history of your game. Let's go back to, you said you've got some great stories about Mr. Palmer and the Masters. So I want to know, what's it like the first time you show up for the Masters as a young player?
Well, my first Masters, I guess I was 31 years old. At Christmas time, you get the invitation, and you're allowed to go down to play practice rounds every day if you want, from December 25 to when the tournament starts in early April. I went down with a Walker Cup friend of mine, Doug Fischescher. We went down a weekend in January, February, March, and practiced and played. And I did that for about 5 years, and having played there, obviously, during the tournament and playing practice rounds during the tournament, so I got a chance, obviously, to play Augusta a lot, which was very, very special. The first time I went through those gates, I really had to have, it's sad to me that I didn't realize the experience. I knew the history, and I knew that going to Augusta was unbelievable, but I just never relished the moment. And as I talked to my Walker Cup players in 11 and 13, I just told them to make sure that they enjoy the moment, think about the moment. It's not about the competition. Well, back in the day when I played at Augusta, to me it was all about competition. It was always about winning. And unfortunately, I learned a little bit later on in life that that's not what it's all about. So, do I remember the times going down there? I certainly do. I remember my first Masters when I played with Gabe Brewer, and I made the cut. I worked real hard, and I made the cut, and I got a chance to meet Dave Spencer and Bob Klecki, the two co-professionals at Augusta, and I think they respected me, and I certainly respected them in Augusta, and so I made a lot of friends down there, and I think that's how I got the opportunity to play with Mr. Palmer in 1981. It's a great story because Dave Spencer, I was on the practice range hitting balls on Tuesday, and he came up to me and he said, would you be okay if you played with Mr. Palmer on Thursday? And back in the day, it was we played twosomes, and the amateurs always played with a past Masters champion. So obviously my first year was Gabe Brewer. They didn't know who I was, and I perfectly understood that. But as I met Dave, and so I said, well, absolutely. Well, then when he walked away, I go, oh my gosh, what if that's really true? With Mr. Arnold Palmer at the Masters. So then I started getting nervous, and sure enough, the parents came out, and sure enough, I was paired with Mr. Palmer. And so many great stories about that day, but one of them is that I always had a routine that we would hit balls, and I'd say hello to Mr. Palmer on the range, and then I'd take a putter and 3 golf balls. A caddy would go to the caddy shack to get water or whatever, go to the restroom. I would always go to the locker room, go to the restroom, and I'd go on the putting green. I said, I'll meet you on the putting green. And so I'm on the putting green, and we're the group ahead of us is on the tee, and so Mr. Palmer's putting, and we're putting, and so the group tees off, and Mr. Palmer says, Jim, I'm going to go to the tee. You want to come with me? I said, oh, Mr. Palmer, you go. So I was really nervous. The crowds were just unbelievable.
Sure.
So I said, Mr. Palmer, you go ahead. I'll catch you. I'll be there in a minute. He said, you sure? I said, yes, sir, you go. And so he gets up on the tee. Well, as soon as he walked off the putting green and started walking to the tee with a couple of his guards, everybody in the crowd, I mean, all the people standing there just turned to watch him. So now their backs were facing me. And now I'm going, well, now how am I going to get to the first tee? Because it was just, there was just all these people there. You couldn't move. And so he's on the tee and he sees me trying to, and so he sends one of his guards to get me, and I get to the first tee, and I walk up on the tee. He said, I told you should have come with me. So he was great. I just had, and I had one of my best rounds at Augusta, ironically. And back in the day, I hit this one iron, this Hogan Apex one iron, and I hit it all the way around. We get to the 18th tee. I'm 2 under par. I'm tied for second place. We walk off the 18th tee, and he pulls his club out of my bag. He says, what the heck is this thing? And I said, well, Mr. Palmer, I said, I'm playing with my golf idol. I'm playing in Augusta. I'm tied for second place. I said, my adrenaline's flowing. I said, this has been one of the best clubs I've ever hit. It's been a club that I can hit pretty far and straight. And he said, well, my goodness. He said, I can't believe how far you can hit that thing. So, and he was just unbelievable. He said, I asked him if he would meet my parents afterwards. He said, absolutely. And we had a great round. He was very, very kind to me. And, in my life, I've had a chance to play 97 holes with Mr. Palmer, and he's just a very, very special person.
Wow, I've heard so many incredible stories about him, and obviously the Golf Channel's done so many, different features of him over the past couple of years, and it's just every story you hear just makes you appreciate him more and more and everything that he's done for the game. I know you've got another great story that you've told me that I want you to share, and this is about what I think you labeled as the greatest day of putting of your life. Could you give us that story?
Well, so I played in 5 straight Masters from 80 to 84. And back in the day, anybody could go to Augusta on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You walk up to the gate, and you could buy a ticket, and you could go in. You go buy a ticket for $12, I think, and go into the gate and watch the practice rounds. Well, obviously, corporate America got a hold of all that idea, and now, you got to either know somebody or you got to go through a lottery to get to get tickets for practice rounds. So I, back after I played my last Masters, I would rent a house. I'd take customers down there. I belonged to Palmetto Golf Club over in Aiken, and we'd go to Augusta. We'd watch practice rounds. We'd play golf over at Palmetto on Tuesday, and then we'd come back home on Wednesday because on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday the crowds are so big that it's really hard to see, particularly if you want to watch somebody's in contention. So it was great. We had a great time with it. So I did that for a lot of years. So in 1996, 12 years later, Will Nicholson, who was chairman of the tournament, not chairman of the club, but chairman of the tournament, was president of USGA for when I was playing Walker Cup. And so he had got me some tickets. I wanted to bring a large customer down there, and he got me some tickets for Thursday and Friday, and they were clubhouse passes. And so we're standing at the first tee getting ready to watch Mr. Palmer and Buddy Marucci, a good friend of mine, tee off on Thursday, and Will Nicholson walks by, and he says, I said, Will, I want to just thank you so much for these tickets. It's very special, and my friend Rich Weiss here, we're having a great time, so I can't thank you enough. He said, Jim, he said, hey, you got your shoes on? I said, yes, sir, I got my golf shoes on. He said, you got your clubs? Well, I said, well, they're out in the car in the parking lot. He said, do you want to play? I said, where? He said, here. I said, when? He said, now. He said, Peter Jacobson just hurt himself coming from the practice tee to the putting green, and Frank Nabilo just teed off, and we need somebody to go as a non-competing marker to play with Nabilo, because otherwise the pace of play gets all messed up. And Danny Yates is a member there. Good friend of mine who's always kind of been the non-competing marker was already out. So I said, yeah, I'll go get my clubs. So I went to the car. I'm carrying my clubs to the parking lot. And some guy says to me, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to play. He said, well, who are you? And I said, well, it's a long story. So anyway, so Will Nicholson picks me up in his cart, takes me to the third tee. So now I haven't hit a ball or putted a ball at Augusta National in 12 years. And so I tee off with Nabilo. I get introduced to Nabilo, tee off number 3. I make bogey at 3, and number 4, the par 3, I kind of chunk it off the tee. I knock it on there about 15 feet, and 2-putt make a 4. We get to number 5, and I hit it in the back bunker. I chip it about 15 feet, and Chester, my caddy, I asked him where to hit this. He said, Mr. Oakley, got a couple inches left of the hole. I aimed it left. I made a 15-footer. We get to 6, and the flag is where they had it on Thursday, ironically, was where they usually have it on Sunday, the top right, which has got a pretty large plateau. I hit it in the middle of the green. I hit this first putt, and I didn't get it up the hill. I know where, excuse me, I know where it's going. It's going front left of the green. So I just walked down because, my score doesn't count at all. I'm just there to help keep pace for Frank Nabilo. So I walked down, I yell at Chester, I said, where do I aim this? He said, Mr. Holtgrieve, about this far right of the hole. I hit this 90-foot putt. It goes in the hole for 3. The crowd goes crazy. Number 7, I made a 30-footer for birdie. Number 8, I made a 2-putter for birdie. 9, I made about a 20-footer for par. 10, I made about a 15-footer for par. 11, I made a 30-footer for birdie. 16, I made another 80-footer for par. We're walking off the 16th green, and Frank Nabilo said, Jim, I've played all over the world. I've never seen 2 putts for par like this in my life. So, the whole point was I didn't line up any putt. I just asked Chester where to play it. It didn't matter. It didn't count. And I just went up there and hit the ball, and it's the best putting round I probably ever had in my life, and it didn't even count.
Did that round? I mean, did you learn anything from that? The fact that you just totally letting go of it and not caring what was going on, that's when you putted your best?
Well, Jeff, unfortunately, no. I did. I should have. And I've told that story so many times, and when I played with some people who just get up there and just hit it, it's really amazing when people kind of do that. And I've tried to maybe do that a little bit more. I've tried to pick a target and just go. When I putt now, I do not. I took some lessons from Rotella, not only in the psychology of the game, but also in some points about putting and picking targets. And so my putting is much faster than it used to be, but I still line it up. I still try to get a picture of how it breaks. Yeah, I mean, I got to do that. But am I faster? I am, but am I like I was there? No, I'm not like that.
Well, that just sounds like it was one of those magical days, too, that is hard to reproduce no matter how hard you try.
Right. That's right.
All right, let's shift gears over to some of your Walker Cup experiences. So you were captain for 2011, 2013. Can you give us an idea of just some of the players that you had on the team, and then maybe a little brief synopsis of what happened in each?
Well, in 2011, the Walker Cup was at Royal Aberdeen Golf Club in Aberdeen, Scotland, the 6th oldest golf course in the world. And then I knew that the 2013 Walker Cup was going to be at the National Golf Links of America up in Long Island, New York, where in 1922, George Herbert Walker, that's where the very first Walker Cup took place. So when I got the nod for the 11 team, I knew that the last 5 captains had have been allowed to go twice, once over there and once over here. So when somebody said to me, "Are you disappointed that you didn't get your first Walker Cup in the United States?" I said, "Well, first of all, I love Scotland. My first Walker Cup was at Muirfield in Scotland. That's where the game started." And then I said, if I do it right and don't get in trouble, I hopefully got a shot at 13 with National Golf Link. So I'm going to get two of the best venues in the history of Walker Cup. So no, I'm really pumped about the 11 Walker Cup, and I'm really was excited about it. And so, just to give you some names that were on my 11 team, number one would be Jordan Spieth, who right now is probably one of the hottest young players on the PGA Tour. I had Harris English, who's also doing very well on the PGA Tour. I had Russell Henley, who's doing very well on the PGA Tour. We had, my goodness, I got to think of all the guys' names because we had so many good players in that we had Blaine Barber, and we had Nathan Smith, who was the older guy. We had Chris Williams. And so we had just a really, on paper, we probably had one of the best Walker Cup teams in the history of Walker Cup. When you look at all these young guys' accolades from college and from amateur golf. Obviously, Spieth and of course Patrick Rogers was one of the other guys too. Those are the two young guys. They were 18 years old when they played Walker Cup. They were going to be freshmen in college. They were seniors in high school. It's unbelievable to me because I was old when I played Walker Cup. So but I said to them a lot. I took them to the first tee of Royal Aberdeen when we first got there, and I said, "Gentlemen, I've done my due diligence on the research of the Walker Cup, and all my life I've always wanted to win, and everybody always wants to win. But I said this competition is not about winning. This competition is about having this experience, about being able to represent your country, and represent your families, your communities, your friends, and it's all about the experience of having played golf over here in Scotland, meet 10 new guys from Great Britain, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, and just to enjoy this great game that we're so fortunate to play." So, I know that you're going to go out and you're going to compete and you're going to do your best, and that's all I ask, and let's go have a good time. Well, we lost. We got beat 14-12. And, was I disappointed? No, I was not disappointed. I guess I thought that, that the guys were disappointed, which I'm sure they were. But it was one of the great experiences. And in my closing speech, I said, this was good for the game. And everybody will grow from this. Everybody will go on. And hopefully we will do the best we can to grow the game and to influence the younger generation that golf is the greatest game, greatest sport to me, I think. So it was great. I mean, it was very, very special. However, at 13, you can't put it into words because the 13 was at National Golf Links. Like I said, the beginning of the Walker Cup back in 1922. I took the team, and just let me share with some of the guys I had on the 2013 team. We had Corey Whitsitt, we had Bobby Wyatt, we had Max Homa, we had Michael Weaver, we had Michael Kim, Patrick Rogers. We had two older guys, Todd White and Nathan Smith. And I'll talk about that in a minute. We had Kelly Craft, and I said Michael Weaver, yeah. And so, and Justin Thomas. And Justin Thomas is really coming out strong this year so far on the PGA Tour. But what was so great about the 13 team is that it was obviously over here in the United States, like I said, at National. And I'd asked a lot of my friends, I said, if you had a chance to take 10 young guys to a historic monument or a historic building in New York, where would you take them? And I was hoping that they would say the 9/11 Memorial. And everybody did. There were a couple that said that might be too tough on those young guys, but 99% of the people I asked said, no, you need to take them to the 9/11 Memorial, which is where exactly I wanted to go. So we went there on Saturday morning of Labor Day weekend. A friend of mine was on the board, Seth Wall, who at that time was CEO of Deutsche Bank. He was on the board of the 9/11 Memorial, so he set it up for our team to go there. We were very well received. The place was packed. We walked through the two pools. The museum was not completed. So we went to the two pools and walked around. And we got escorted around, so we got to learn about, some of the facts that took place that day. And so the guys were introduced to that. And, some of these guys were 6-8 years old when that happened, so they had no idea. And when they saw some of these books in the gift shop and saw these horrific pictures, it was just amazing to see the look on their face, and that they were there, and they were going to have a chance to play for their country. And then Thursday was probably one of the biggest days because President George Bush, came and had lunch with us, and then he played 2 holes with 5 of the guys, and he played the other 2 holes with the other 5 guys. But he spent about 2.5 hours with us on Thursday. Patrick Rogers during lunch asked him about 9/11, and then for 25 minutes, President Bush told us what happened from when the Secret Service, when the little girl was reading to him at the kindergarten class. The Secret Service agent whispered in his ear about the the first plane that hit the tower. So from that point till about 2 o'clock in the morning, he told us exactly what he did, and it was just really emotional, and it was really something. So. And then Friday, he came back for the opening ceremonies. And then Saturday, he and Laura came back and watched a few holes watched the team play. And so it was just unbelievable. So while our team was a great team, it was certainly probably not the same accolades and same victorious players that we had, like in 11. They were very good players, don't get me wrong, but they had a whole new mission about going to play for their country. And as I was criticized in 11 and criticized in 13 by the media, I always talked about it was not about winning. It's about the experience and the chance to play for your country and your family and your community and so on and so forth. So we won, and we won decisively. The third largest winning score in Walker Cup history, 17-9, and 2 mid-am guys, Todd White and Nathan Smith. Ironically, they won the 13th and 14th point. We had to have 13.5 points in order to keep the trophy. If everything was tied, we would have kept the trophy at 13.5. But when Nathan won that match, he was number 14, and so obviously at that time we won, but other matches were being played, and my guys went on to win most of those, and so it was a great victory. It was just, the weather was absolutely perfect. The golf course played just the way C.B. Macdonald, one of the great architects in golf, designed it. President Bush being there, I mean, the whole week was absolutely perfect. And it's something I'll just never, ever forget.
It sounds like such an amazing the whole experience. And I know you sent over a great picture of you and the team, not just the one of you guys winning the cup, but also one with George W., which I'll definitely put on the page so the listeners can go and see that. Question that I have for you is, going from 2011 to 2013, it sounds like there was, as you said, a whole different mission with the team. They banded together around, playing for the country. Was there anything that you learned as a captain from the experience of 2011 and not being victorious with such a studly team, but then coming back and helping your team band together to win 2013?
You know what, Jeff? It's a great question, and I probably can't answer it like people might want to expect it to be answered, because the answer really is no. There wasn't really anything different. I said to both teams, it's not about the winning; it's about the experience. You go out and have a good time. And I tried to tell them back when I played Walker Cup, I was always thinking about winning. I wasn't taking in the experience and relishing what was going on and paying attention to what was going on around me. And I said, you guys need to do that so you remember, so you never forget about being a Walker Cupper, and you never forget about playing for your country. You never forget the flag raising ceremony. And obviously the 13 team got a chance to meet a president of the United States, which I think they were blown away by that. These guys know how to play. For me to go teach them anything about the swing, that wasn't going to happen. I just made sure that they got a chance to know the golf course in as many different settings as they could, and to be comfortable with their game and make sure that they were playing with the right course management that they could do to play the best game they could. And the only difference really between the 11 and 13 team is that the 11 team, in trying to make this foursomes, which is if you don't know, there's 2 days of competition, Saturday and Sunday. In the morning on Saturday, we play a foursomes, which is the alternating shot form of competition. And then in the afternoon, we play singles. And on Saturday, there's 4 matches in the morning, and there's 8 matches in the afternoon. So 2 guys are sitting out on Saturday. And then there's 4 matches on Sunday morning, 2 guys are sitting out. But then Sunday now we play all 10. So that's why there's 26. When I played, there was only 24 points. So you got to sit 2. But then the kicker is trying to get who can play together in these foursomes, because we typically, over in Scotland and England, they play that format all the time in order to play fast, and they just that's a big form of play. Over here, we don't do it. And I got to be honest, we still don't. We're not very successful at it. And so in 11, trying to find the right combination of players was challenging. We actually switched up some things that didn't work. Versus the 13 team, I had Patrick Rogers and Justin Thomas, even though they went to 2 different schools, were really very good friends. So there's a group. Michael Weaver and Kim went to California. So there's a team. And then I had Bobby Wyatt and Corey Whitsitt, who went to Alabama. So there was a team. So I already had 3 of the 4 teams pretty well set up, because they were really good friends. They played together. They knew each other. And I think that really helped us, because those guys did win some points. So that's really the difference between 11 and 13, and it was certainly beneficial for the 13 team.
Well, I think it's so important to mention your whole mantra of it's all about the experience, not necessarily the winning. And I think that's something that any golfer can take for any round that they're playing, you get the chance to go play a place like a Pebble, or you get to play in Augusta or something like that. But I think sometimes we get so bogged down with how well we're playing or how poorly we're playing that you do miss out on the enjoyment of the game. Like you said, possibly the greatest game that there is, where you're out in a beautiful setting usually, playing with your friends in many cases, and to get bogged down with the fact that maybe you're not striping your irons the way that you would like to, but to take in that experience makes such a big deal. And I had the chance to go, and I know that you were there. I got to talk to you there at the Curtis Cup this past year when our good friend Ellen Port was the captain here in St. Louis. And, to see that, the flag-raising ceremony and be able to experience that as, just a person in the crowd, I can't imagine what it's like for those players. And to have somebody that's leading them and telling them, this isn't about you winning and standing there with the trophy, but this is about you experiencing this and playing for your country, I think is just such an admirable thing as a captain. So I want to applaud you on that. I have a question regarding the team. 18 Strong, the website and podcast here is all about the idea of players playing to their utmost capabilities, whether that be their physical abilities, mental abilities, skill-wise. How do you guys go about when you're selecting players for a Walker Cup team? What are you looking for in these guys?
Well, for 4 years, I went around the country and went to various amateur events and college events to talk to the players that it was their responsibility, and it was their duty to their country that if they had a chance to play Walker Cup and play for their country, they needed to do that. Unfortunately, there's some players who think that going out on the tour and playing for the money is more important. Fortunately, I had some guys who felt differently. Patrick Rogers was going to try to play Walker Cup, Nathan Smith. So that was most important. And what I did, that's the reason why I went to these tournaments, because I wanted to see how these gentlemen would play under different situations. The idea that they were going to represent, their family, their friends, as I've said before, and represent their country, they needed to do so with distinction, with honor, with respect, with humbleness. So if I saw somebody hit a bad shot and have temper, that was certainly somebody that, if he had a lot of talent and he had a real good chance of making the team, I was going to have some private time with. So those were the things that I really looked at, and to see how they manage themselves on the golf course in various situations, how they handle themselves with the press, how they handle themselves with people. And so those were big items to me. And everybody that I had in the 10 guys, the 20 guys that I had, they all fit that bill. Did we have some, when we took in 2010, when we formed a practice squad of 16 players, were there some guys in that practice squad that might have been a challenge if they had made the team? Yes, there were. Same thing as in 13. But those guys either decided that they were going to turn pro, or they just didn't. They didn't muster the challenge, and other guys played better than they did, and they made the team. Prime example is Jordan Niebrugge, who was on the 13 team. He wasn't on the radar at all. He was not at the practice session when we had that in December. But he won the Wisconsin medal and stroke play. The match and stroke play. And he also won the Western Amateur. He played real well in the U.S. Amateur. So He made that team, but he was a great young man too. He was very shy, but he was a good young man. So those were the challenges for me. I don't, just so you know, I didn't have a vote. The International Team Selection Committee of the USGA votes on this team. I did have input, and they did want to. The committee wanted to hear what I had to say about the players, so I reported that. But I didn't have a vote. I had influence, but not a vote.
Gotcha. All right, and just to wrap up here with a couple quick questions, you talked about how guys react to the highs and lows of their playing days and experiences. I'd like to ask some of our guests, what are some of the highs and lows of your career? So, and just in a brief little answer, what would you consider one of the most frustrating or disappointing moments that you've had on the golf course?
On the golf course?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Golly. I got to summarize it by, I don't know that I have a specific on the golf course shot that caused this or caused that. I'd like to generalize it, Jeff, by saying that I made a mistake going and turning professional because I only went out there for the money. And that was a bad decision on my part because the good Lord said, no, that's not going to work. And if I'd gone out to respect the game, I respect the game, but if I'd gone out to play the game for what it's supposed to be, for fun, I'd have been much better off. So that was disappointing. When I lost in the Western Amateur and I lost to some guys, lost this match or didn't qualify here or that. Yeah, but that's just part of the game.
All right, on the other side, what would you then say is possibly the most gratifying moment or experience that you've had?
Well, I always say it this way. I asked Mr. Palmer, I said, Mr. Palmer, what's the greatest golf shot you ever hit in your life? And I have a lot of fun because I got an answer from him. So when I'm with clients or when I'm entertaining people or we're just sitting around having a beer talking golf, I always ask my friends or whoever I'm with, what's the greatest golf shot you ever hit in your life? And everybody, goes around, and it's ironic that not every time is it a hole-in-one. So, the greatest golf shot I ever hit in my life was in the 1981 Walker Cup at Cypress Point. I was the old guy compared to the young guy running Rafferty. Jim Gabrielson, my captain, said, Holtgrieve, you're just tenacious enough to take this kid on. I'm going to let you play against him. Jay Sigel was on that team, Jody Mudd. All these guys won their matches early on Sunday. And I was, the 16th hole is probably one of the most famous par threes in the world. Back then I was a good long iron player. I was 2 up on this young man. But he won the 14th hole. So I was 1 up. So he had to tee off first on 15, which is a par 3. We both made 2 on that hole, ironically. And then he teed off first on 16, hit it in the ocean. My caddy and I had practiced this hole for many times, and usually, when Ben Hogan played that hole in the Crosby, he would always lay up. He hit over the cypress tree and lay up, and but I didn't like the layup, so it was 240-something yards to carry to get on the green. My caddy says, you're the best long iron player I've ever seen, so I pulled a 2-iron out and hit it 2 feet from the hole, so I made 2, and I went on to win, to tie the next hole. I went on to win the match, and that was the point that gave us the 13 and a half, at that time 13, and we won the Walker Cup. So it's the greatest golf shot I ever hit in my life, and it's one I'll just never forget.
Wow, that's a pretty incredible story. All right, 2 quick last questions. Are you and I think I know the answer to this, but I've been asking everybody this question for no apparent reason. Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore?
Caddyshack.
And last one, everybody that comes on the show, I like to get their impression of the term 18 strong. When you initially hear that, what does that conjure up in your head?
18 strong?
18 strong, the name of the podcast, the name of the website. If you hear that a player is playing or he is 18 strong, what do you think?
That means that I got to go pump more weight with Jeff. 18 strong, golly. Well, and one of the things that's so impressive about these young guys that we had on Walker Cup is that their physical fitness is really something. They do work out. They do stay in shape. That's something that now that I'm getting older, I've got to do more of if I'm going to continue to try to play golf. I mean, obviously I can't play like I used to, and I can't certainly compete with the likes of Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth. But I'm impressed that these young guys have decided that their core is really important and they work really hard. And that's something I think if you really want to continue to play the game and have some fun with it, you got to get in shape. So 18 strong is, I'm not sure how to really answer that. I'm not that smart to be able to answer that question other than I don't know. How would you want me to answer that?
Hey, this is my question to you. I've got my own answer. Everybody's got their own opinion, and it doesn't have to be about fitness. To me, it's more about just a player being able to finish a complete round or finish their 4 days of tournament play, or even a guy going out and playing the greatest 18 holes of his life, but putting in the time, putting in the work, training hard, practicing smart, all that stuff. So I think, you talking about the fitness level of the guys that you worked with and some of the stories that you told and, how the 2013 team overcame the barriers of, banding together and winning the cup, I think that kind of epitomizes it in my opinion.
Well, I will tell you that both of my Walker Cup teams, they played 18 strong holes every time they teed it up for their country. I can tell you that. And that was something that became very, very important to them, that, walking 18 holes and playing for their country was pretty strong.
That's awesome. All right, Captain, I want to thank you for your time today. I think the stories that you told, I think everybody that's listening is gonna love them, first of all, but gonna get a lot out of them, just the lessons that you instilled in your players and that you've learned over the years. So I just, again, want to thank you for coming on.
Well, Jeff, it's my pleasure, and thank you for what you do for all of us golfers, and thank you for having the time to talk about golf. I certainly love doing it.
All right. Thank you, sir, and we'll catch up very soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Jeff.
I hope you guys enjoyed those stories and the interview as much as I did. I know that when I was talking to Jim, I was pretty much mesmerized just hearing the stories, the people that he's played with, the experiences, the situations that he's played in, and just the whole experience around the Walker Cup and being with George W. Bush and the guys that he was captaining, and just some pretty powerful stuff. So, Jim, I want to thank you for sharing your message, your experience, and the idea that we all need to focus a little bit more on the enjoyment of the experience and the surroundings and the people we're playing with, as opposed to just the competitive nature of the game, because it is such a wonderful game. As all of you guys know, all of Jim's information is going to be in the show notes. I've got some great pictures that Jim sent over of the Walker Cup teams, of them with George W. Bush. So go over to 18strong.com, search for Jim Holtgrieve, and you'll find his stuff will pop right up, and you'll see those pictures. Some great, great stuff. I do have a favor to ask of you guys. I don't ask for many favors. I know I do. Well, okay, I ask for a lot of favors. I ask for you guys to help give me some reviews in iTunes for the 18 Strong podcast and send me any messages via Facebook and Twitter and that stuff. But if you guys are enjoying the podcast, I'm going to ask you for a favor. If you could, and if you enjoyed this episode specifically, because I think this is a special one. This is a special one for me having Jim on. If you think that you have somebody that would enjoy this episode, if you could either share it with them via social media or email the link to them. I would be very, very grateful to you to help spread the message, not only in the podcast, but just to shed a little light on Jim's story, Jim's experience, and anybody that enjoys the Masters and loves this game, like most of you guys do. I think we'll get a lot out of this episode, and we'll enjoy the stories that Jim had to tell. So, once again, thanks for showing up. Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast. I promise to keep hunting down incredible guests to give you the best information that's out there. And as always, if you have anybody you want to get on the show, shoot me a message. Let me know what suggestions you have, and I will do my best to track them down and get them on here. So once again, thank you, everybody. Don't forget, train hard, practice smart, play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.